We are thrilled to welcome Mark Evans, MBE, celebrated for his pioneering expeditions and cultural impact. For over 40 years, Mark has led journeys from the Arctic to the desert of Arabia, sharing stories that inspire, educate, and leave lasting legacies. Based in Arabia for 25 years, he's a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, an honorary fellow of the Royal Scottish Geographical Society, and has been honored by both Queen Elizabeth II and His Majesty Sultan Haytham of Oman. Today, we will hear about his journeys, his work with Omani youth, and the lessons he has learned about exploration, leadership, and cultural understanding. Welcome, Mark, with us.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for being here with us. And thank you for last night. It was a great lecture. We all enjoyed it.
Great.
My first question to you is, what first inspired you to pursue a life of exploration?
Oh, that's a good question. I think what inspired me was the fact that I grew up as a little boy in the countryside. So my school was 8 miles away and I could only get there on the bus. But when the bus brought me home at the end of the day, there was nothing and nobody around. We lived in a house literally in the middle of nowhere. So you had to make your own entertainment. So my entertainment growing up, because Shaver been in London, I'm an old guy going back to the 1960s now. So my entertainment was to take my fishing rod and walk across the fields and go to the river and go fishing, take my dog. And I think I was very comfortable being outdoors, very comfortable being in my own company. But there was a particular charity in London when I was 17. I had the opportunity to go north to the Arctic for the first time in my life. I'd never been to London when I was 17. So I had to go, the chance came to go to the Arctic for 6 weeks, to sleep in a little tent with two people.
You were 17.
I was 17.
Wow.
So sleep in a tent with two people you've never met, and you're going to be doing scientific research on the glaciers every day or up in the mountains. The sun will never set for 6 weeks because you're so far north, so you won't see any darkness, you won't see a star for 6 weeks. And I thought, wow, that sounds incredible. And so I applied to go. They invited me for interview to London. I didn't have a suit, so I had to wear my brother's suit, which was about 3 sizes too big.
Wow.
And I remember going for an interview in this lovely old building in London. And it was all men, and they were all puffing a pipe, because you could smoke in public in those days. And they all asked me questions, and I couldn't answer any of the questions. Couldn't answer any of them. And I thought, this has been a disaster. There's no way are they going to want me to go on this expedition. But you know what? They saw someone who could benefit from going. I couldn't contribute very much, but I could benefit. And so when the brown envelope arrived 2 weeks later, I was convinced that when I opened it was going to say no, but it said yes. So all I had to do was to raise money. It was about 500 Omani rials to go to the Arctic for 6 weeks, which at the time was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money.
And my parents didn't have that money, so they said, you know, go back to school tomorrow, apologize for wasting the teacher's time, give them back the application form. And so I went to find the teacher. I said, look, I'm really sorry, but my mum and dad said we haven't got the money and I can't go. And he said, look, if you really want to go, if you're prepared to work hard, you can raise the money. You've got to be just little bit creative. Organize an event like we had here last night and charge people 5 rials to get in. Organize a disco at school for everyone to go dancing all night. Go and sit in a bathtub of porridge in the town square and people will donate money. You can do anything to raise.
She gave you ideas.
Gave me ideas, and I made a profit. I made more than 500 rials, so I was able to go on the trip and I had a bit of money in my pocket.
That's amazing.
And that just set me off on a life of exploration, really.
That's a great start, I guess. My next question to you is, how has living in Oman for so many years, we talked and you told me you lived for over 25 years.
22 years in Oman.
20 years in Oman. How did that influence you and pushed you even further to do more exploration and adventures?
Yeah, well, life in Oman is just one big adventure. Even if it's trying to cross the street in Al Khawair, that's an adventure because you're not guaranteed to get to the other side. Oman is perfect. If you love the outdoors and the adventurous lifestyle, it's great. So I had an old Land Rover in Oman, Abu Ftila. And my old Land Rover, I would go every weekend. I would put my two dogs. I had two Omani dogs, Wadi dogs. I put them in the back of my Land Rover. We'd drive out to Ibra and go into the Sharqiya Sands, or we'd go to Birkat Al Moz and we'd go up onto Jabal Akhtar. So every weekend I'd be sleeping under the stars and with my two wonderful dogs, or sleeping in the desert with some friends, and we just have a great time.
So the dogs traveled all over.
The dogs are all, they're great. They're 100% Omani dogs. Now they're shivering away in Scotland because I took them home with me to Scotland. And,
yeah, you told me.
They
really, survived?
Only just,
good.
Yeah, but they're good. One is 16 years old, which is amazingly long age for a dog, actually. Yeah. But, Omani dogs are tough. They're bred pretty well. So, Oman is just the perfect home for exploration. It has a long history of exploration as well. Lots of explorers used Oman as the starting point for their journeys. Mubarak bin London, Wilfred Thesiger, his two great journeys started in Salalah, and Bertram Thomas, who we spoke about last night, his journey started in Salalah and Ras Al Had.
Yeah. I will continue to ask you more about Oman. So what makes Oman, in your opinion, a unique bridge between tradition and modernity?
Well, I think wise leadership. There's one man, well, there are many people in Oman who I admire, one of whom is the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Saeed Badr al-Basaidi. And I always remember when I met him once, because he's a busy man and you only ever have a couple of minutes with him because he's so busy. But he said, Mark, he said, you have two of these and one of these, and use them in that order. Listen more than you speak. And wouldn't the world be a better place if everybody did that? So I think, what I love about Oman is that it's done a brilliant job of protecting and preserving its heritage and its culture whilst moving forward. So, I love the fact that you can sit in Shati Al Kurum and you can have 5G on your Wi-Fi and drink a Starbucks coffee, but 2 hours later you can be sitting with my friend Amar Al-Wahibi in Badia with his Bedouin family, and there's no mobile signal at all, and the pace of life is much slower and much simpler, and that duality of having one step moving forward but also not forgetting your past and your heritage. Yeah. I think Oman's done a brilliant job of balancing that. And 8 years ago we did a journey by camel. His Majesty Sultan Haitham was the patron of this journey. We spent 49 days riding camels from Salalah to Doha. So we retraced the first ever crossing of the biggest sand desert on earth. And I remember when we left Saudi to go into Qatar, there's a border crossing at a place called Salwa. And the Emir of Qatar looked at our poor Omani camels, and they were quite thin at this time because they hadn't eaten a lot for 40 days. And he sent us some Qatari camels. And it was like getting out of an Uber and getting into a Rolls Royce. The Qatari camels were great. The Omani camels were really badly behaved. But the Qatari camels, if you said left, they went left. If you said right, they went right.
Is it about the training?
Well, maybe, or the English driver. I don't know. But it's. But I do remember the people that were riding the camels. They were from an organisation in Doha called NOMAS. Mm-hmm. And NOMAS has been set up to reconnect young Qataris to their heritage and their culture, because in Qatar they feel that the progress has been too fast, that young people have lost that heritage, they've lost that culture, spending too long hanging around in shopping malls, and they don't know the etiquette of serving coffee, they don't know the etiquette of this, that and the other. And so they've had to create a special school called NOMAS to reconnect young Qataris to their culture. And I don't see that in Oman, because I think Oman has been much more careful about how it progresses, and I think it's much the better for it.
Great. You spoke about how difficult it is to train the camels in your lecture yesterday, and I thought about it must be also difficult for you to carry all the supplies that you need for a trip and the food that you need to carry. So how do you do that for a 30 days or
Yeah,
40 days?
well, you know, in the old days, camels were tough and they would have carried everything, but then the desert was alive with more wildlife. And so what I notice when I read Bertram Thomas's books or I read Wilfred Thesiger's books is that at the end of every day, they'd send their team hunting in the sand, and they'd come back with a rabbit or a hare, they'd come back with a gazelle, a reem, and they would cook that, and that would supplement their diet. Well, you know, A, you're not allowed to hunt anymore, which is good, but B, there aren't that many animals left in the desert because of human activity. So you have to have vehicles to carry. We always have a support vehicle to carry food and water. And, you know, even down some of the quieter parts of the Omani coast, there are small fishing communities, so you can always get...
so you can stop by a village?
You can stop by, you can get biryani, of course, and you can get water and resupply. You don't have to travel too far, and that's one joy of Oman. It's small enough that you're always relatively close to help or supplies if you need it.
Great. We will move now to the Jewel of Arabia, and I would like to ask you, what message or story did you hope the Jewel of Arabia expedition would share with the world about Oman?
Well, there were multiple messages, really, but there were messages for people in Oman as well as around the world. So we wanted to put this globally. We wanted more people to know what an incredible country Oman is. And that's where our podcasts came in. So our podcasts were downloaded on every continent on the planet, including Antarctica, which is quite amazing. So we wanted people around the world to know a bit more about the history of Oman, about the culture of Oman, about what an incredible country it is, but specifically about its biodiversity, its incredible range of wildlife and habitats, and about the young Omanis doing great work, people working for the Environment Authority, people working for the Environment Society Oman. You know, when I first went to Oman, it was full of people like me doing the environmental work, but now it's just, there's a growing number of super talented young Omanis working at the Oman Botanical Gardens or working for the Environment Authority, doing their bit to protect the environment, doing their bits to promote sustainable lifestyles. And so I wanted to use the journey to put the spotlight on them, which I hope that we did. And nationally, internally in Oman, we wanted more people in Oman to appreciate what they have. Because, you know, I'll be doing a journey that I think we're going to talk about in a little while. I'll be doing a journey later this year that I've actually done already around Bahrain and Qatar. And when you're on the water in Bahrain and Qatar, there is nothing. The sea is almost dead. And yet you go on a boat or off the coastline of Oman, the seas around Oman are full of life. It's amazing. But it's only about a third of what there was 20 years ago. So Oman, like every country in the world, the environment's under a bit of pressure due to human activity. And so it's, you know, that was the other thing we wanted to do with the Jewel of Arabia, was to make people a little bit more aware of how unique Oman is. Yeah. But it's not indestructible. And unless we're careful, unless we look after the environment, what our children inhabit in the future is going to be pretty negative. So we need to just think about what we do a bit more carefully, about the rubbish that we leave when we go to the desert, camping at the weekend. You know, that's all connected to tourism. If you want tourists to come back, you need to make sure that they have a really positive impression of Oman. And I've taken tourists into the desert, into the Sharqiya Sands, and they love it. They love the people, they love the hospitality, they love the souk in Nizwa, they love the walk on Jabal Akhtar, and all of that positivity. You go onto the top of the dunes to watch the sun go down, and you see that the people who were there before you, they left a big black bin bag of rubbish, and they tried to set fire to it. Only half of it's burnt away, and it's all, the plastic is strewn over the desert, and that one thing just undoes all the good. And people leave with oh, you know, people in Oman, they don't care about the environment. Well, it's not true. It's like everywhere. It's only just one or two people that don't. But, you know, we've always got to try and educate those people. That's
a very important message. So since we're talking about the youth, I would like to ask you, what qualities stand out for you, or in your opinion, in the next generation that is different from the previous generations?
Well, I think the pace of change in Oman has been so fast that I think the generation today are very lucky that they have a great education. I know Dr. Madiha, the Minister of Education, really well, and I know young people in government schools today have incredible opportunities to learn, which their predecessors didn't. I see incredible talent, and I'm not just saying this because you're sitting next to me, but the Omani girls for me, sorry for the guys in the room, but the Omani girls for me outperform the boys. They work really super hard, and not that the boys don't, but I just think the girls work 110%, whereas the boys work at sort of 95%. They're kind of cruising a little bit, and but 95% is pretty good. I never got 95% in anything when I was at school, but I just see such talent. Really, it's incredible. At Outward, the last 13 years that I spent in Oman, I was very lucky to establish Outward Bound Oman, which is now running beautifully. I'm not involved anymore, but 32,000 young people have been trained by Outward Bound Oman, most of them from government schools.
Does it prepare them for leadership, or?
Not just leadership, because the world would be a dreadful place if it was full of leaders. Sometimes we need followers too. And it teaches people life skills that you don't learn in school, and not school anywhere in the world. But where do you learn how to problem solve? Where do you learn creative thinking? Where do you learn to work as a member of a team where people around you are from different cultures and different ages? That's the reality of the world, isn't it? If you're working at the embassy here or Sultan Qaboos Cultural Centre, you're working with people of different cultures, different ages. So Outward Bound takes young Omanis into the mountains, into the desert for 4 days, 3 nights, takes away their mobile phone, which is the most painful part of the experience for them. So they're disconnected from that digital world for 4 days. And they think that's awful on day 1. But at day 4, they say that's been the best thing in the entire 4 days. But I just see such incredible talent, not just amongst the girls. I mean, I employed 48 young Omanis when I left Oman, and just incredible people, and great work ethic. And one of the activities we used to do with the young people is that we used to put 3 cards in the sand at the start of the 4-day course. And we'd say, go and stand next to the card that you think reflects your future. And one card said, I see my future working in government. One card said, I see my future working in the private sector. One card said, I see myself setting up my own business and establishing an SME. And I would say when we started 13, 14 years ago, most young people would stand on the government card. I see my future in government. But there's been a huge shift now, which reflects what's happening in the real world, is that more and more young people see their future working in private sector. And in particular, the girls tend to gravitate towards the SME, because you can juggle family life and running your own business much better when you're running your own business. And
you're more in control.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. So, it's fascinating to see how things are evolving, but I just see young people today full of incredible potential.
Great. Now we will move to the question which everyone is eager to learn about, is about your next adventure in Oman, 3165.
Okay.
So can you tell us more about it, and what inspired you to do this journey or adventure?
Yeah, so it's a journey. So Oman 3165. 3165 is the length of the coastline. If you look at Vision 2040, 3165 is the length of the coastline in kilometres, from Musandam in the north to Dalkut on the border of Dhofar in Yemen in the south. So it's a journey I tried to do about 20 years ago, but now I'm supposedly retired, although I seem to be busier than I've ever been in my life. But it's I have the time to do it, whereas in the past, when I tried to do it 20 years ago, I was a school teacher, so I was limited to a certain number of days in my holidays, and sadly we just ran out of days, so I couldn't quite complete all of the journey. But this time I can complete all of the journey. And the reason we've chosen to do it now is that in 2026 it's the first COP devoted purely to oceans. And so the timing is specific. The COP is going to take place in Nairobi in Kenya in 2026. And we launched the project last week in London because last week, September the 25th, was International or World Maritime Day. And so the focus this year is our ocean, our obligation, our opportunity. So I saw that as an opportunity to tell another great story of beautiful Oman, which has an incredible maritime heritage. Yeah. But again, once again, it's an ocean, it's an environment that is under pressure. You know, there are less fish in the ocean than there were. There are less humpback whales in the ocean than there once were, and they're under pressure, and there's less than 100 left. The turtle population is in decline, as it is everywhere in the world. But there are great stories of great young Omanis doing innovative things to protect these incredible animals. And so it's another opportunity for me to travel slowly through a beautiful country, podcasting, using social media to share stories around the world of innovation and positivity, and making people appreciate what they've got on their doorstep.
Yeah, we are so looking forward to hear more about it. Hopefully we'll be able to host you again here and hear about it more.
Fantastic.
My next question is, how do you feel to have your work recognized by His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, and how does that acknowledgement shape your sense of purpose?
Well, I've never met anyone who doesn't appreciate a pat on the back or a quiet well done in their ear. And that doesn't matter whether you're a street sweeper or a humble educator like me or whatever. You know, everybody likes a pat on the back and be told well done. And so for me it was just, I mean, of course it's an absolute honor, and you are so excited to go and receive your honor, but it just inspires me to want to go on and do more, really. And don't ask me to do what you're doing, and don't ask me to use one of these microphones. Don't ask me to repair a car. Don't ask me to tune in the TV. I don't really understand how to use my mobile phone other than the on-off button. You know, we're all good at something. Yeah. And, I've, over the years of trying and failing, I found something that I enjoy that seems to make a difference. And so it's just great, an absolute honor, and it just means so much because Oman's a country that's given me so much happiness in my life. You know, I wouldn't be happy in Dubai or Abu Dhabi. That's not me. Oman seems to be the place where I find contentment, and I'm able to paint my own picture. And it's just lovely that that's recognized by someone who I think has done an incredible job since he's come to the throne. And when you reflect on the situation that he inherited in terms of the price of oil, COVID,
it was a very challenging time.
I think it was the biggest plague of locusts we'd had. So, every card that he turned over, it was such a challenge. And yet here we are, the Omani economy's thriving. The country's doing really well, and it's incredible. Another example, I spoke about Said Badr before, another example of wise leadership, and I think that's what inspires me about Oman. That's what I enjoy, be it Dr. Madiha, be it His Majesty, be it Said Badr. There's some extraordinarily talented people driving the country forward, and it's just great for me to be able to spend 22 years of my life there.
We all appreciate the hard work you are doing and the education you are doing to the youth. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
I would like to end this conversation with a question, with a question to you. If you would like to share any funny story or anything that happened along this journey that you would like to share with us.
On the Jewel of Arabia?
Yeah.
My team, the team I travel with, they're very funny people. So we're laughing all the time, actually.
That's great.
But I would say it's not a funny thing really, but it's something. It's a challenge that we found difficult to manage, and some people who don't understand Oman might find it a bit odd or funny. But the biggest problem we had. So often people will ask the question, what was the hardest part of the journey? And I find that easier to answer, because the hardest part of the journey was saying no to the unending hospitality that we had. Because we had to be in Salalah in 30 days. And if we accepted every offer of dinner, of lunch,
You'll
of
never be there on time.
we'd be about 7 kilos overweight, but B, we'd never have reached Salalah. And it was so hard for us to want to be appreciative of the offerings and the warmth and the friendship, but also say, look, I'm really sorry, but we can only stay for 30 minutes because we've actually got to get to this place today. Otherwise, we're going to be so far behind schedule. And I think we just about managed to get the balance right. I hope we didn't offend anybody, because everyone was just so kind. And I think even in the middle of the desert, the jungle drums of communication, people seem to know we were coming all the time, and they want to find us and they want to outdo the hospitality of the previous community. So if the previous community slaughtered a goat, this community would want to slaughter a camel.
It became like a competition.
It did become a competition, and the pressure for us to find a way of saying thank you, but we need to keep moving, became harder and harder, actually. So it was kind of funny, but it was also sometimes quite awkward and difficult. We didn't want to offend anybody, but we had to keep moving.
Yeah, great. So I finished with my questions. Thank you very much for the interview. I will turn it over to our colleagues and diplomats here if they want to ask any questions.
I have one prepared. Thank you. If you could take one message from this story that you gave us today, whether it be through your research, through your writing, through the journey itself, what message would you give to the future generation of Omanis? We discussed how the difference in the terrain, the culture, has happened over the years. But what message would you give to the future generation of Omanis?
Okay, that's a great question. And my answer to that would be, so there's a book that I'm reading. So it's very easy. So I've been at Penn State University all week, working with some amazingly talented young people, 45 young Omanis studying at Penn State. And so I met most of them this week. And the focus of the week was all about sustainability. But there were lots of American students also in the room, not just Omani. And the comments you get from young people are that the future is very worrying, very concerning, very depressing. Climate change, increasing mental health issues. What's the future going to be like for us if climate change is going to, all these wildfires that we have everywhere now, and unpredictable rainfall. And yet there's a book I'm reading that puts a completely opposite spin on that. And it's written by a girl in Scotland called Hannah Ritchie. And the book is called It's Not the End of the World. And Hannah argues, so it's very easy to get negative about the next 50 years. Hannah argues that we should be optimistic, because if you stand back and take a long-term view, her argument is that the world today is better than it's ever been. Life expectancy 100 years ago was 34, now it's 75. Child mortality, 100 years ago, 2 out of every 5 children died before the age of 5 years old. Today, it's minimal. Air pollution in London. 100 years ago, people were dying because they were breathing air that was so polluted you couldn't see across the street. And what happens when we make an effort and join hands? Air pollution in London today is almost zero. It's incredible. Ozone. When I was at school, we were all anxious about this hole in the sky called ozone layer. And yet, within 3 decades, all of the chemicals which was coming out of the back of our refrigerators, I seem to remember, gone. The ozone layer's repaired itself. So her argument is, whilst we have to be realistic, there are challenges, her argument is, A, the world's in a better place than it's ever been, so be positive. B, when we really make an effort and join hands, like we did in COVID, we can come up with a solution to stuff pretty quickly. But C, young people born into the world today are the first generation to be born not just with the knowledge of these problems, but with the tools to solve them. So the only thing that stops us is the will to make a difference, to change our lifestyle, not to use single-use plastics, to drive an electric car rather than a diesel car, not to leave our ACs running all day in the house, in an empty house when we're at work. You know, if we all make an effort, the future can be very, very optimistic and positive, because actually when you look at the trajectory of the quality of human life, it's better today than it's ever been. We've just got to get the balance right with the environment. But the generation today have got the tools to do that. What's lacking is just the effort. So that would be my message.
Any other questions? Hadid?
So my question is, you had mentioned this program that's created by the Qatar Ministry of Education, NUMAS, and its aim is to reconnect the youth with, with their culture and heritage, just because of that shift, the technology and the recent world is just pushing all the youth away from their culture and stuff. Do you think it would be a great initiative and it would be viable to create a similar program in Oman for the youth?
I don't think so, because I think Oman's pace of development has been more cautious and considered. When I go into a home in Oman, it's always the young child that comes and serves the coffee, and I think Omanis do a much better job of putting an emphasis on that at home. Whereas I think Qatar went from 0 to 100 mile an hour in about 3 years almost, and I think lots of Qataris now work in 8 till 6 jobs. They have a maid at home looking after the kids, and that nurturing of the family. It's difficult to do that and have a full-time high-pressure job at the same time, and that's a cultural change, a cultural shift. But so maybe there will come a time when what you've said needs to happen in Oman, but I don't think at the moment, because Oman's evolved at a much slower, steadier, more cautious pace, I think. Don't know. You'd have to talk to parents about that, because I'm sure there are parents in Muscat who are very anxious about their children growing up, that they don't understand this and they don't understand that, and they spend too long on their mobile phones. Well, that's a challenge for a mum and dad wherever you are in the world, really. But I think Oman's done a really good job of tempering the pace of that change and retaining the culture.
Yeah, and I would personally say they're more careful about maintaining it. Like parents and school and stuff, they're very careful about maintaining culture and heritage, as well as traditions, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other questions? It's Turkey.
It's a simple question. If you could describe Oman in one word, after all the experience and living there for almost 20 years, what it will be?
Ooh, only one word.
He wants to make it really difficult
I
for
know.
you.
Flipping heck.
Like when you see Oman.
Got it. I've got a word. But it's a word you will have never heard. Okay? And it's a word I shared with the students at Penn State this week. And it's Kovyashevik. You won't find it in the English dictionary. And it's an Inuktitut word. The Inuktitut is the language spoken by the Inuits, the people who live in the far north of Canada. Okay? And the Inuit people speak a language called Inuktitut. And so I told this story to the students at Penn State last week. And so there was an American guy who lived in California, and he got fed up with being stuck in traffic every day going to work. He got fed up with the air pollution. He got fed up with the stress. And he gave up his job, and he went to the northernmost state of USA, which is called Alaska. And he built himself a log cabin in the mountains. And he lived there for several years, just on his own. And every now and again, he'd come back to California, and he'd do lectures to people about his life living in the wilderness. Often there was a bear banging on the door. He was surrounded by wolves at night. His nearest neighbor was 20 miles away. And when he would lecture, on the front row there would be journalists and media wanting to talk to him about his life. And isn't it dangerous? And he'd say, well, you know, I got in a bus today here in San Francisco, and I couldn't even speak to the bus driver because he's hidden behind 2 sheets of bulletproof glass. And I went to my hotel, and there were 3 locks on the hotel door, and you're asking me, is my life dangerous? And you're hiding behind locks and glass? And so the journalist would say, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then they'd say, well, where is this place where you live exactly? And he said, well, and what's it called? He said, well, he said, where I live is called Kovyashevik. And they said, well, where is it? Can you show us on the map? And he said, well, this morning it was here in the park in San Francisco. And yesterday, you know, I sat under a tree in LA and it was there then. And they said, but I thought you said Kovyashevik was in Alaska. And he said, no, I live for the moment, right? And so Kovyashevik, the word, is Inuktitut. It means living in the present moment with quiet joy and happiness. And that, for me, describes Oman, because I spent 22 years living in a country where I found joy and happiness. I don't know whether that answers your question, but that's a good word. Look it up. He wrote a beautiful book called Kovyashevik about his life. But most journalists couldn't understand that Kovyashevik was a place, but you couldn't put it on a map. It was a place in his mind where he found happiness every day. And you've probably had a Kovyashevik moment today. It might have been when you were having your first coffee of the day.
I think we will start using this word to remember it.
Yeah.
No one would have ever guessed that.
No. My friend in Oman, in New Zealand, when he used to come to Oman a lot, and we used to talk about Kovyashevik and Oman, and his house in New Zealand is called Kovyashevik. So,
any other questions? Betty, do you have any questions?
Not at this time, but he has already given me a place to really live in my mind.
good.
And that is the Doha area we were talking about last night.
Oh, yes. Yeah. The jewel of Oman.
No, I have not gone there, but I wish I have.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, yeah.
I will really love to see the sky, especially the one you described in the night, especially in the night. Okay, the clear sky. Sometimes you feel like reaching to touch it.
Yeah.
That is a place to be.
Yeah, it is. It's that's the hotel of 1 million stars, not 5 stars.
I agree with you totally. I agree with you. Did you get to the vegetation area? How do you find them?
Well, you know, local people are the best people to ask. So if you want to find a well, if you want to find an enormous tree, just ask a local people, because the Jabali people of Dhofar, they know that landscape like the back of their hand. So
you got to see the oasis.
Of course, yeah, but you won't find them on Google Earth. Talk to the local people; they know. So sit down, have your halwa, have a shua, dates, talk around the fire, and then people will share everything with you, which is great.
One more question. The dunes, the sandy dune when your vehicle gets stuck? How often did that happen?
Not very often, really, because not very often, because normally you're quite prepared for it. So we would stop and let the air out of the tire, so the bottom of the tire gets wider, so it doesn't sink into the sand. And then you have to remember, then when you get to the hard ground, you have to re-inflate it, otherwise you get a puncture very easily. So we were always very careful. But when we did get stuck, what we noticed was that it's always at the end of the day when you're a bit tired, and it's you're a bit lazy, you don't want to let the air out your tires because it's going to take 20 minutes and you're going to have to reinflate the sea. And you see a nice little campsite only 50 meters ahead, but between you can see the sand is soft, but you think, if I drive fast enough I'll probably make it, and but you don't, and you get stuck. But it doesn't happen very often.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Oh, very good drivers, yeah. But yesterday we drove here from Penn State, and the last hour trying to drive through DC traffic, far more dangerous and far more frightening than driving in the desert of Oman, really. I don't know how. There were people cycling, there were people on e-bikes, there were people jogging, there were cars going everywhere, there were some flashing signs, some flying signs. Oh, blimey.
And it's very stressful to do that every day.
Oh, I can imagine,
Yeah.
No.
It's not fun.
Yeah, no, thank goodness for Uber, eh?
I have a short question. So, are you planning to write another book for your upcoming expedition to Oman?
Maybe, we'll see. But, writing a book, it can take a long time, but actually if you're writing about something you've done, it doesn't take a long time. And that's where, I think if you're writing fiction novels, you're always trying to think of the story and the plot and a lot of thinking, whereas if you're just writing about something you've done, it's much easier. And, in the old days, I used to keep a diary. Every night I'd sit around the fire and I'd keep a diary. But today, podcasts, it's an audio diary. So, and the nice thing about a podcast is, so every day we'd keep a podcast, we'd keep an audio diary. And I can sit at my desk in Scotland and I can replay the podcast, but at double speed. So it's a podcast of 20 minutes you can actually listen to in 10 minutes. And you can take the information out of that, and that creates the words that you write. And, AI is pretty helpful too. And, it's so maybe we will. But we'll see. Oman's full of amazing stories. And a very lovely Omani friend of mine, Khalid Haribi, you may know Khalid. Khalid said in Oman, the stories start where the road ends. Very true. Actually, you meet the most amazing people when you go out into the empty places.
Amazing.
One more question. Did the man on the wheelchair, the handicap,
Yes.
how did you all manage to conduct your expedition with him
Well,
through the 30 days?
He was only with us for part of one day, so he wasn't with us all the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. Otherwise, that would have been too challenging. But at least he could be with us for part of the way, and that electric wheelchair was bought very generously by His Royal Highness the Yazin bin Haitham. Very generous of him, because those electric wheelchairs, there's a lot of technology involved, and they're not cheap. And but His Royal Highness, as you know, he's the Minister of Youth amongst many things, and so he cares a lot for young people, whether they're handicapped or disabled or enjoy good health. He's a very great supporter of young people, so thanks to him.
That's great. Thank you.
Any more questions? I guess that's the end of our conversation. Thank you very much for a great conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.